What BS is still being taught to children? It doesn't matter who started it, such bullshit. It absolutely matters who started it. If you punish a child for arguing/fighting over something they didn't start, the child will be confused, and rightly so. It goes against everything we tell children about fairness and rule of law. So true. It truly does matter who started the argument/dispute. Punishing someone over something they didn't start, but were dragged into, is horrible. No one should be punished for getting dragged into a mess that they had no original involvement in. I always felt the reason adults make up a lot of BS is to hide the real fact that they just don't want to deal with it in detail any further. This one. And to make it even worse, what will emotionally impact a child is so different than what will affect an adult. An adult trying to listen to a child explain their side of the story may not get why something was so damaging, and it becomes very frustrating for some children to explain themselves to someone who doesn't seem to believe them. Add in perpetrators who don't actually think they were doing something wrong because they're ignorant of the consequences of their words/actions, or maybe a case of differing maturity levels, or will try to distort their side to look like the sympathetic character, and it becomes a real mess to sort out. Bless those adults who took the time to listen to kids and actually sort out disputes between two kids, especially if they took a more involved approach than King Solomon. I'm still glad for the adults who listen and then try to coach kids on how to self-discipline or build some emotional armor. But that alone can't really salve all childhood wounds. This statement is used to cover the fact that whoever is making the final decision on the punishment doesn't have all the details and likely won't investigate further. Not great for the students. Source: I'm teacher. It's absolutely bullshit. But sometimes figuring it out is an impossible he said she said. And there's not enough time for both a fruitless interrogation and today's learning objective. Never had to enforce this madness when I taught, but I can understand why other teachers do. This understanding excludes situations where it's clear who the instigator is. Your school record will follow you your entire life. My record from Mount Lebanon didn't make it to Venetia School. Venetia record didn't make it to McMurray. Only a few miles away. Entering college, nobody knew anything about the schools I'd attended. That being said, when I got to college freshman year, the advice I kept getting was, don't worry about your grades. Take the hard courses, the challenging courses, and you'll learn more, which is what matters. And it is true that I learned a lot by doing that. But it also turns out that grad schools really care about your GPA still. I graduated from engineering school in 1994 with a 2.97 GPA. 26 years later I went to grad school. There was a scholarship I could not apply for because it requires a 3.0 GPA. This is exactly what fucked me in college. It took me 3 years to get into grad school after undergrad because of the stupid fucking advisor who told me the grad schools will care that you took harder than necessary courses. They don't look at GPA. So I challenged myself in relevant courses, disregarded the unrelated, uninteresting ones, and did okay overall, because who gives a shit about GPA? Fuck that guy for wasting 3 extra fucking years of my life. That was single-handedly the shittiest advice I've ever received in my life, and I believed him, because I'm a first-generation college student and had no other direction. I'm 31 now with a good job and my doctorate and all that, but I'm still fucking pissed about that whole situation. Is this an American only thing? No school I've ever been to has even implied that your actions in school will go beyond that. The only thing that leaves school with you are your grades. I could be. It was for me in the US. I don't know if it is done anymore. But in grade school, grades 1 to 4, they would threaten us to behave by saying that something would go on your permanent record and follow you your whole life. Totally BS, as we barely even had computers back then, let alone an effective way for them talk to each other. Late 80s. Edit. Permit to permanent. In Denmark the ABC song consists of 28 letters because we didn't used to count W for some reason. However, now we obviously do count the W, but the song was never updated, and many adults thinks me an idiot when I say there are 29 letters in our alphabet. It truly pisses me off. Is there a reason you guys just left W out of the song? It's only in the song, we didn't count it. The reason is very simple as well. It won't fit the melody properly if you added W. I actually had to count on my fingers to verify, but in English we only have 26 letters in the alphabet. For a moment I thought I was going senile. Yes, I know Danish is a different language and therefore has a different alphabet. It's okay. Danish has more letters because they break their letters in half sometimes. There's a half W too. Ignore bullies and they'll leave you alone. When you do that, one of two things are likely to happen. Either they'll mess with you more, or they'll move to someone else and bully them. If you stand up to bullies, they back down. The earlier in life you put these people in their place, the less likely they'll develop their bad behavior as a lifelong practice. Not to mention, most bullies are experts in winding people up, and will get their pleasure from the tiniest hint of stress. A flickering eye can be quite enough. They seldom know how to deal with someone who gives as good as they get, though. This is so true. I always tried to ignore it or laugh it off. But I know that anyone could see I was hurt by it each time. If ignoring them makes it go away. Why did they keep going at me for years? I stood up to my bully. Got my ass kicked and arm broke. Adults really need to get a better hold of children with emotional issues. Yep, stand up to bullies is a good stopgap. But when you get down to it, that's just passing responsibility onto the victim. When bullying becomes a problem, that's a product of irresponsible adults. Full stop. Dude, I remember in junior high there was this kid named Tom. He was a cool fucking dude, but he was poor and white trash. Kid was jacked. Just had straight redneck rage. Anyway, one day we got this new kid named Chris who comes to our school. He was taller, also jacked, and just mean. Big dick alpha male kinda guy. Of course, he starts picking on Tom, which was his mistake. I will never forget the sickening crunch of Tom punching Chris in the eye. The blood all over the floor, and how swollen his eye was. And the fury that was in Tom's eyes as he defended himself. I swear to fuck, that broke something in that bully that day. Because he had to have reconstructive eye socket surgery, and he was never the same. Careful who you fuck with. There were a fair share of bullies in my high school. I usually hung out in groups, so I was never targeted. But there was one kid I remember who got picked on pretty mercilessly. They would shove him around, dump his backpack out. Somebody pulled his pants down in the hallway once. You know, the usual stuff. Anyway, one day I happened to be in the cafeteria when they start really laying into him. I mean a lot worse than usual. Kid took it for a couple of minutes and then hit some kind of breaking point. He squared his shoulders up and hocked a huge wad of spit right into the lead bully's eye. Whole cafeteria went dead silent before the bully group, maybe 5 or 6 total, jumped this kid and started beating him. Took about 10 seconds for everybody to process what was happening before maybe 20 other kids jumped in and start beating the ever-loving shit out of the bully group. Long story short, lead bully ended up with a broken arm. Somebody stomped on it while he was pinned down, cracked it right above the wrist, and a broken jaw. He caught a kick in the face while he was on the ground. Several of the others had various injuries including a couple of cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder and a lot of bruises. The kid who was getting bullied ended up with a badly torn lip but nothing worse. It was really cathartic to watch, but I always wondered why it took so long for anyone to step in. Looking back, I feel pretty bad that I never helped the guy out either. Bystander syndrome. Maybe no one ever stepped in when I got picked on. Until a trespassing drug dealer teenager kicked me in the face because I caught him on camera, was filming stuff for a communications class project. A bunch of jocks found out about it and chased the guy out of the school just in time to be caught by the arriving police car, which my filming partner recorded for me to see. Tom reminds me of a dude who was in the same suite as me in college. We'll call him Jake. Honestly, he was a pretty good roommate. Just came from a dirt poor upbringing in rural Georgia and carried a lot of baggage from that. He was a small average sized dude, but let me tell you, he was tough and could throw a punch that would kill a horse. I didn't witness this incident, but one day Jake was out in the parking lot fixing his car. That thing was a 20 years old piece of shit, but he absolutely loved his ride. Out of nowhere, a couple football players who came from more affluent families walked up and started taunting him. At first Jake ignored them, but people said you could tell he was getting hot. Then one of the bullies tried to key his hood. Jake absolutely cold cocked the dude. Uppercut straight to the temple. The guy easily had 6 inches and probably 100 pounds on Jake, but he went down like a sack of potatoes. Apparently his eyes rolled back and he was snoring. The other bully flat out turned and left his COD buddy, some teammate he was. Then Jake just went back to fixing his car lol. When the guy came to a few moments later, Jake told him without even looking up, you have a concussion. The campus infirmary is in the science building over there. Go get yourself looked at. Moral of the story: don't mess with someone who literally had to fight growing up to survive. Moral of the story: be like Tom. Don't be a Chris. I swear to fuck, that broke something in that bully that day, yeah. His eye socket. I got told this shit so many times, and if I ever said a peep back I got shamed for being just like your bully, i.e. self-defense is as bad as aggression. So I got trained to never ever stand up for myself. Ick. Now how they say fight or flight? It's actually fight, flight or freeze, as some of us react to stress like a rabbit. Shutting down in terror. That's probably from being trained to never react to bullying. Was not a good option when I got sexually assaulted either time. Damn, I wish I had shoved my thumb in his eye socket or cried and screamed or something other than just freezing. As a young adult I let bad bosses and mean coworkers and landlords with no respect for tenant rights all just treat me bad, and never did I so much as glare at them, let alone tell them off. And just like the childhood bullies, adult bullies actually go after you more when they find you will let them get away with it. It spread to other parts of life too. Like I couldn't even find the cojones to stand up to people who weren't trying to hurt me. Like if a bus closed the door right as I walked up, instead of knocking I'd just slink off and wait 40 minutes for the next bus. Now in my 40s I have disabilities and need to request certain accommodations. And damn is it hard to ask for things, even though they are my legal right. I tremble with anxiety when I have to call a service provider and ask them to do this to allow me to come in. All because I was brainwashed as a little one to think that I must avoid conflict above all else. Must never let anyone know if they are causing me misery. So I never developed any skills or comfort at conflict. The domino effect of insisting your 5-year-old not do some little thing like yell shut up stupid at some kid who mocked them. It really makes a big difference to who they grow up to be and how well they will function in the world. I got told this shit so many times, and if I ever said a peep back I got shamed for being just like your bully, i.e. self-defense is as bad as aggression. So I got trained to never ever stand up for myself. Ick. Now how they say fight or flight? It's actually fight, flight or freeze, as some of us react to stress like a rabbit. Shutting down in terror. That's probably from being trained to never react to bullying. Was not a good option when I got sexually assaulted either time. Damn, I wish I had shoved my thumb in his eye socket or cried and screamed or something other than just freezing. As a young adult I let bad bosses and mean coworkers and landlords with no respect for tenant rights all just treat me bad, and never did I so much as glare at them, let alone tell them off. And just like the childhood bullies, adult bullies actually go after you more when they find you will let them get away with it. It spread to other parts of life too. Like I couldn't even find the cojones to stand up to people who weren't trying to hurt me. Like if a bus closed the door right as I walked up, instead of knocking I'd just slink off and wait 40 minutes for the next bus. Now in my 40s I have disabilities and need to request certain accommodations. And damn is it hard to ask for things, even though they are my legal right. I tremble with anxiety when I have to call a service provider and ask them to do this to allow me to come in. All because I was brainwashed as a little one to think that I must avoid conflict above all else. Must never let anyone know if they are causing me misery. So I never developed any skills or comfort at conflict. The domino effect of insisting your 5-year-old not do some little thing like yell shut up stupid at some kid who mocked them. It really makes a big difference to who they grow up to be and how well they will function in the world. I got told this shit so many times, and if I ever said a peep back I got shamed for being just like your bully, i.e. self-defense is as bad as aggression. So I got trained to never ever stand up for myself. Ick. Now how they say fight or flight? It's actually fight, flight or freeze, as some of us react to stress like a rabbit, shutting down in terror. That's probably from being trained to never react to bullying. Was not a good option when I got sexually assaulted. Either time. Damn, I wish I had shoved my thumb in his eye socket, or cried and screamed or something other than just freezing. As a young adult, I let bad bosses and mean coworkers and landlords with no respect for tenant rights all just treat me bad, and never did I so much as glare at them, let alone tell them off. And just like the childhood bullies, adult bullies actually go after you more when they find you will let them get away with it. It spread to other parts of life too. Like I couldn't even find the cojones to stand up to people who weren't trying to hurt me. Like if a bus closed the door right as I walked up, instead of knocking I'd just slink off and wait 40 minutes for the next bus. Now in my 40s I have disabilities and need to request certain accommodations. And damn, is it hard to ask for things, even though they are my legal right. I tremble with anxiety when I have to call a service provider and ask them to do this to allow me to come in. All because I was brainwashed as a little one to think that I must avoid conflict above all else, must never let anyone know if they are causing me misery. So I never developed any skills or comfort at conflict. The domino effect of insisting your 5-year-old not do some little thing like yell shut up stupid at some kid who mocked them. It really makes a big difference to who they grow up to be and how well they will function in the world. Yeah. I was being bullied. My parents were called into a meeting with the boys' parents. The teacher mentioned the whole ignore bullies and they will leave you alone. My dad just turned to me and said, ignore that. If he does it again, break his jaw with the hardest thing you can find. Afterwards my dad threatened his dad and they moved a few days later, so that worked out fine for me. Afterwards I had to take boxing lessons and was told, because I can fight, it's my job to stand up for those who are bullied. And I've learned bullies never learn anything. Even after a beating they come back with larger groups and it becomes a 1v5 then 1v10. To beat a bully you have to humiliate them in such a way nobody else wants anything to do with them. And that's not easy. You don't break their body. You must break their spirit. Bullies are not a problem with a one-size-fits-all solution. They can have different motivations and satisfactions they gain from what they do. Different people respond differently to the same stimulus. I personally dealt with one of my bullies by making them afraid of me, but there are other bullies I encountered in my life that wouldn't work or I would not be able to reasonably do it. I knew someone that stood up to a bully non-violently who was much bigger than them. They got rocked by the bully, then still got bullied after that. It got to a point where finally they wouldn't take it anymore, and the next time the bully accosted them, they fought. And they fought hard. They came out way more injured than the bully. But the bully knew they no longer had an easy mark. None of the solar system models are even remotely to scale. Edit. As many people have pointed out, there are scale models. But they are very, very large. The issue I was referring to was classroom models, which are often not clearly marked as not to scale, and often screw up the size of the planets. Well, when the Hayden Planetarium tried to do it, people declared Pluto not a planet anymore. No one wants to lose more planets. I remember reading that if you used a football to represent the sun, then you'd have to place one of those small magnetic balls about a kilometer from the ball, and that would represent Jupiter. Earth would be the size of a piece of rice and about 300 meters from the ball. There is a reason why space models are rarely to scale. Space is really big. Edit. I'm not American, so a football is a round ball played with the feet. Space is big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemists, but that's just peanuts to space. You know what was never preached to me as far as scale size? How big Africa is. It is insane. It's huge. And contains so damn many climate zones. Everything is a lot further away than you think. Regardless of how far away you think things are. Everything is so damn far away. This scale, if the moon were a pixel, really put that into perspective for me. Semicolon. I think this is a significant contributor to the continuance of the flat earth nonsense. Most people just cannot even begin to conceive just how fucking tiny we are in comparison to the planet. In their head, when they hear the earth is round, they can only picture themselves standing on top of just the largest beach ball you ever did see. but like a bit bigger. Kids are starting social media so early these days. And I think that's very dangerous because it puts a lot of pressure on the kid to attribute their worth to their social media success. I also think parents are way too open with their social media when it comes to their kids, and it's totally a violation of the child's privacy, of which some parents will never admit. I post my pets a lot and don't really post pics of my kids. And somehow this has convinced a couple of people that I love my pets more than my kids, so I must be a shitty parent. Like, no. I'm just not worried about the ferret's privacy. It's wild. Like, no. I'm just not worried about the ferret's privacy. It's wild. You horrible person for not respecting your ferret's privacy rights. Did your ferret give you permission to post his/her picture? What if they didn't like their fur on that day because it was matted, because they just woke up? I expected better from a lizard possum/s. We will probably only find out in a decade what the people's first and opinions really are on their parents posting them on social media. What? I'm 24, and my mom was posting all my shit on Facebook when I was like 12 or 13. Fucking terrible. She also retroactively posted all my baby stuff too. Hello. My first-hand opinion. 10 years earlier. It's horrible. It shouldn't happen. It's mean. I hate my face already. Why share it? I say. Please don't put it on Facebook. And my mother does. Like why? I worry more about bullying and perception than social media success. Listening to some of my friends' tweens/teens breaks my heart. Even the ones who aren't bullied mention so and so always having fun, doing this and never having anything bad happen or feel down. They can't quite grasp yet that it's just a facade. These people share the best of their life, often through filters, and that it's not reality. Before our child was born, we told our families not to put pictures of them on social media because we felt that if they want to be all over the internet, it should be their choice. No one listens, and I fucking hate it. If my wife sends a pic of them to my millets on her Facebook, within minutes then it gets shared around the family. My wife even started posting pictures. When I explained to my mill why I don't post pictures of them at all, I was accused of being ashamed to be a parent and not loving my child. Privacy is looked down upon and social media success is way too overvalued. That adults know what they're doing. Full adulthood hits you after 3 main events. 1. Holy shit, I hit puberty. 2. Holy shit, my parent or parent/parental figure or figures don't know everything and are quite fallible, actually. 3. Holy shit, no one at any level of society has a fucking clue. They're all just sort of having a go and hoping for the best. Not only do they almost always know what they're doing, it's very important for kids developmentally to believe that that's true. Stress causes a lot of problems in the brain and body, especially a developing one. That cracking their knuckles will destroy their hands. Like, just fucking say it annoys you, Jessica. Ask them to stop. It's not that hard. Stop feeding them bullshit. Oh, I went to the doctor with chronic pain all over. One of the specialists just told me to stop cracking my fingers because cracking your fingers causes leg pain. Eventually went to another doctor who diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. That's a disgrace of a doctor. The first one, I mean. That Rosa Parks protest was spontaneous. And that she was just some random person. She was the secretary for the president of the local NARP. And she was chose because she was believed to be best to elicit sympathy for the cause, partially based on her light skin. It was a carefully scripted event, aided by out-of-state activists. I honestly didn't even know this until I read your comment. I'm not sure I'm remembering correctly, but one of the actual spontaneous protests was by either by an unwed mother, a criminal, or both. She was deemed unsuitable to be held up as an example. Yeah. If it was a random, spontaneous event, how was there pictures of her getting kicked off the bus? I'm not gonna hurt you. Tell me the truth. In general. Stop teaching, you will not be in trouble if you tell me the truth. If you are going to punish them, it's teaching them. It's more important to not get caught, that your word means nothing, and to lie anyway as you will earn the punishment. Definitely learn to lie my ass off, and more importantly, stick to my narrative. My parents wouldn't whip me unless I confessed. No confession. No whipping. Yeah, it's such a backward way to get the truth from someone. I mean, how often do they think that's going to work? Maybe a couple times at most, and then anytime they're asked a question they can conceive they may be in trouble for answering truthfully, they will lie. Prior to college/university levels, there is far too much emphasis on simply believing what the teacher says, and not nearly enough on sourcing of their information or independent research. Students are often expected to trust what they are being told is true without being taught how to make sure it actually is true. This has created a lot of people willing to believe the first thing they hear, so long as the person saying it sounds more educated. Politics and misinformation. I'm going to add that this also can go hand in hand with how smart someone sounds. If the person seems well put together, has a larger vocabulary and charm but can be spewing BS all over. Someone with poor verbal skills can be very factual and logical, but the thought doesn't get through as well. The person with poor vetting will most of the time pick the charming person. So many people online think that smugness intellectualism. It's constantly taxing. It's more about authoritarianism than anything. Even teachers are constrained because they have to teach exactly what the test says. Multiple choice/standardized testing aren't intended to produce independent thinkers and researchers. Just check the box for the answer your book said. If you found a better answer somewhere else, too bad. You will not receive credit for checking any other box. But can you imagine how exhausting it would be to teach 70th grade and being constantly challenged to prove it? Rainwater collected in rivers and flows to the sea. Then it evaporates, forming clouds, and rains again. Prove it. I don't know if you have been to a high school recently, but you'd be pretty hard pressed to find students who want to do anything independently. My students practically beg for me to tell them what to do, step by step, with little room for creative risk taking. My 5th grade teacher taught us that our blood was blue until exposed to oxygen, and that's why our veins looked blue. 10-year-old me called bullshit and got detention. I had spent a lot of time in the hospital at that point in my life and had seen my blood drawn enough times to know that was crap. Oh shit, mid-40s here, and you've just revealed my elementary teachers were liars. Deoxygenated blood is deep red. Oxygenated blood is bright crimson. Carrots help you see in the dark. Saw it on a kids show. I read somewhere that this was a misinformation campaign created during WWII in England to help confuse the Germans about what the British could always see their planes. They couldn't. They had good intelligence and didn't want the Germans to know radar other than intelligence. It was developed during WWII. Memorization. Memorization and intelligence are two separate things. Not everyone is good at memorization either. Real problem for me, to be honest. I couldn't remember what I ate 2 days ago if my life depended on it. As a kid I learned 3 official computer programming languages, was almost fluent in German, and excelled in school. Now I can barely put together a sentence of German, and I've never coded again since I was young. It's really sad kids these days that have bad memorization skills fail school. It's a genuine issue, especially in today's generation. Children can't have wants, or children's wants are needs. Wants are valid, just sometimes they are not worth the labor or get in the way of needs. I know it's tiny, but it takes stretches. Little Timmy wants ice cream, but needs to eat lunch. So no ice cream. Doesn't want to brush his teeth, but needs to avoid problems. So brush your damn teeth. Doesn't want to hug auntie, and doesn't need to, so can choose to not give the hug. Wants vs needs is not that hard to teach, and on its own doesn't result in entitlement or in being afraid of telling they want something. The hugging/physical contact one is so key. Bodily autonomy is important to learn, and anyone who gets offended by a 4-year-old child not wanting a hug probably shouldn't be touching children to begin with. A little kid doesn't want a hug? Great. I probably just dodged getting a cold for the next 3 days. I'm sure they'll come around and be friends with you. Just remember to be nice to them though, if you want things to work out. Total BS. I heard this so much growing up that no matter how nice and understanding I was to everyone around me, people such as my teachers and peers pick on me endlessly because I was an easy target. Parents didn't believe me when something bad happens, and they all took advantage of that. Don't take S/T from anyone. Someone being mean to you? Tell them to back off or make an example of them. I learned real quick that everyone will gang up on you just for the fun out of it. It takes so much to unlearn just be nice as an adult and leads to people walking all over you at work/school/life in general. Abstinence only sex education. Lol. My mom was bitching to the school district about how we should be doing abstinence only, but nothing came of it. Of course. She also wanted to ban the HPV vaccine because she thought if teens had it, they would be more promiscuous because there's one less STD to be afraid of. So, you know, she's a loon. Thief gotten better with not saying sex bad, don't do it, but a lot of sex education especially in the South US is still abstinence based. I'll add even for adults. I moved to the South and I'm still in shock how difficult finding a gyno who will allow an IUD replacement can be. One asked to speak to my now husband to clarify this could harm my chances of conceiving in the future. Pretty sure I would have had to bail my partner out of jail. I've always been open and honest about not wanting children. I found a partner who wants no children as well, but why does my doctor need to get involved in my relationship like that? Even recently I thought I found a good doctor. Come to find out he, doctor, didn't realize I already had an IUD and is still attempting to counsel me about procreation after I asked about a BC4 PMDD. Guidance counselors don't care about your feelings and aren't actually qualified to be a therapist for you. I remember telling my elementary school guidance counselor I didn't have any friends to play with on the playground, and she told me to buy a watch with a TV on it so I could watch TV instead. What a weird thing for him to say. Especially since TVs on watches weren't really around when you were in elementary school. I'd say it's a stretch and ignorant to claim that guidance counselors doesn't care about students' feelings. You're placing your hate on the wrong entity. In fact, it is the district/school board/state that won't adequately fund mental health counselors alongside academic guidance counselors who are expected instead in many places to balance managing and solving students/families' emotional, academic well-being at the same time, which in turn spreads them so thin that they are basically under-effective at doing both. People love to hate on individuals, teachers, therapists, counselors, social workers, nurses, but never seem to find fault in the bigger systemic issues we all face. Maybe you had a bad experience with a bad guidance counselor, which sucks. I'm sorry, school counselors are not trained mental health professionals, but are forced to manage students' emotional health as a part of their role. That if you are being bullied, the two best solutions are 1. Tell your teacher to sit down with the bully and explain how hurtful their words are, and ignoring will make it stop. Which is the ultimate total BS, the tongue map. I remember in middle school science class we had an in-class lab on this one. We were taught about how the tongue map worked, and then our job was to experience it for ourselves. You go to different stations with foods of different flavors and place them on different regions of your tongue and document the results. Of course, as the tongue map is bullshit, I didn't find any results. Naturally, as any academic would, I faked the data. Big mistake. The purpose of the lesson was to show us that you don't always find the results that you're told you will. So I got a 0. NGL, that's a shitty move from the teacher. The experiment results could actually be skewed because of confirmation bias. Explains to students what the result is supposed to be, do it in a large group. So if someone does actually experience no difference, peer pressure will make sure they don't dare to say, taste is subjective and extremely hard to measure. If you wanna do this, do it with experiments that are actually accurately measurable. And don't tell students the expected results. Your whole future depends on your exam results. Bullshit. You can return to education later on and succeed if you are motivated enough and don't tie yourself down financially. My friend and I were just asking about this. 10 years ago we were stressed out in app classes, miserable when we only got a B on a test. Now, no one gives a shit how many app classes I took. I think I only have my college and graduation date on my resume. At least in my field, employers only care that you have a degree. Self-defense will not be tolerated. Bullying will be tolerated because we don't care if you're Getting bullied. 1k upvotes go brrrr. Is that an actual thing people say to children? Now I doubt it, but they might as well say it. A lot of bullying is being swept under the rug with no real intention of ever helping the victims. And quite often, people who perform self-defense in school for any reason are viewed as someone who is also at fault. Studies are more important. There will be time for friends later. As an adult who cannot speak to people, will tell you now. You need to learn how basic communication skills early in life, because later on people will be complete assholes and won't give you the time of day. Edit. I'm starting to think I also should have noted that I'm quite skewed, since I'm autistic and don't understand most social cues. I'm being taught the opposite lol. You need to be likable and have good social skills if you want to get anywhere in life. Just having good grades won't make you successful. I mean, it's true to some extent. But I hate the part where I have to give up stuff like the way I want to dress and sometimes my personality itself just to be likable, that you need a 4-year degree to be successful in life. I think this is changing, or at least people are starting to recognize that there are other options. I think what needs to start being addressed is private vs public universities. High school kids are still being told to go the best school that they can get into, and the reality is that outside of Ivy League, maybe, there's no value gained by going to a private university vs a public/state university. When I'm looking at resumes, I really give no extra consideration to someone who graduated from, say, Tulane vs LSU, other than knowing that Tulane grad is probably saddled with way more debt. If a boy hits you, that just means he likes you. Heard that a lot as a kid, and I'm sure people are still spouting it. Edit. It's genuinely surprising to hear that so many people have never heard of this before. Maybe it's a southern thing. Not quite. But a boy was bullying me quite a bit, and I told my mom, to which she said that means he likes you. Like, no, mother has literally tormenting me. I'm dealing with this currently. My daughter has a boy who, by his own admission, likes her. But he will bully her and trip her, pull her hair, etc. I told my daughter, as did my husband, that he is in no way, shape or form allowed to put his hands on her. Ignore him completely. Tell the teacher each time it happens. That is not an appropriate way to show someone you like them. And yes, we've involved the teacher. I get so angry when people just brush it off as being flirty. Excuse me. Absolutely not. Eater. There's a great song sung by a woman named Carrie Thomas Kovic called My Body That's very helpful in teaching boundaries. Shh on YouTube. School is the best days of your lives. Rubbish. School is a toxic, high pressure, high anxiety setting that a lot of children can't stand. Bullying, unnecessary exams, unnecessary pressure to decide what you want to do at a stupidly young age. Having to meet some kind of peer pressure standard. College and university years were so much better. For me personally, you've still got the exam pressures and, depending on where you're staying, I guess, peer pressure. But you are treated like an adult. Screw college and high school. For me, my 30s are the best years. I've got money, time to enjoy my weekends. No tests period. I'm with my best friend to enjoy everything with. Although, best years of our lives are objective. That children are dying in Africa are dying due to them. I believed for the longest time that if I didn't eat all my food I would be attacking and defending the people starving, not just in Africa but all over the world. Unless you're married, there's no way to prevent getting nasty from sex. In my HS sex ed class, they clarified it only works in monogamous marriages. Unfortunately people cheat. But that's an issue related to the ethics of the person you marry. A lot of history. Or at least how they teach it. Most of the time. It's on this date. This happened, instead of going into straight up detail. Like, okay, I know who invented the phonograph in 1877. But what impact did that have on society at that time? How did that help the United States get to where it is today? I don't get it. Teaching history is a tightrope. On the one hand, a dry list of so and so was born. War happened. Invention became popular, has zero narrative to it, and it creates a list of meaningless facts. In isolation. On the other hand, as soon as you draw a narrative surrounding these events, you introduce the biases of the narrator, picking which groups of people you show impacts on and even how you phrase it. Consider the Texas history books that showed the African slave trade in the context of immigration, and noted that the Atlantic slave trade between the 1500s and 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations. Yikes. Narratives of history are always political and controversial. Lists of facts are less so. When theories are proven in science, they become laws. That's not how science works. Theories and laws serve two different functions. Laws describe what is happening, typically as a mathematical formula. Theories describe why. This is why grown-ass adults to this day still use the dumbus "it's just a theory" line. The reason is that the scientific word theory and the everyday English word theory mean two completely different things. Nothing to do with laws. Not so much what is still being taught, but the lack of teaching of the following in the 21st century is ridiculous. Lack of financial intelligence, and teaching them that social media is not real. I had to take a financial literacy class my senior year of high school, 2013, and they used info, graphs, and interest rates from the fucking 90s. Told all of us, if we got summer jobs, saved up 1,000, put it in one of these accounts, and never touched it, we'd have 1 million when we retired. Don't talk to strangers makes it a lot harder to do my job. 911 what's your emergency help? My mom has had a heart attack. Wait a minute. Do I know you know? Please give us the details to your address so we can. That sounds like something a kidnapper would say. Not today, buddy. Beep. That professionals have all their math formulae memorized. They don't. Look in a journal involving hard sciences and you'll always find lists of minor errors the magazine or the writers made, or there will be studies disproving theories because they contained mathematical errors. Having algebra formulae memorized is a good thing, but not everyone, including mathematicians, will remember all those things when they need it. And you know what they do when they forget? They look it up online. Boys don't cry. As an Alaskan, where Alaska and Hawaii are actually located on a map, hint, not down by Mexico. He only hurts you because he likes you. Can we stop already with setting kids up to be in abusive relationships because they were taught it's a normal expression of love? Opposite of the question, but apparently a lot of kids born in the early 2000s don't know how to read an analog clock. I was floored when I learned this. Milk makes you grow and is the best source of calcium. My family practitioner growing up used to tell me that I need to drink a gallon of milk per day and hang from a bar to grow taller, because that's what his kids did, and they are all over 6 tall. I remember distinctly thinking, how is my dad supposed to pay for all this milk when they don't teach children how to handle death and grief, but they instead lie to said child to spare the pain that they should learn to understand so they can handle more in the future. Sesame Street did it, and Big Bird was devastated, but he learned to cope and move on stronger. Essentially what I'm saying is, parents, if your child pet dies and the kid is devastated, don't lie. Tell them the truth, and help them cope, and help them understand and comprehend why. So when you the parent may die, the child is more equipped to handle grief, and not fall apart, like I did, when my mother died, at age 12. Are parents still telling their daughters that if a boy is mean it's because he likes her? Because if so, that needs to stop. Quit teaching girls to put up with bad behavior and quit rewarding boys for their bad behavior. Columbus discovered America. Someday you'll understand. Nope. Still don't have a clue. You can be anything you want when you grow up. Just ignore the bullies and they will go away. It'll all be fine. Standardized testing. That we are all equal. As much as I would love this to be truth, only thing in which we all resemble each other is death. I mean, it's not healthy for kids to think the way I do. But don't lie to them. Of course a politician's kid will have more privilege than you. And of course if he wants to ruin you, you are completely helpless and fucked. Don't think that justice or good will magically win. Because it won't. Some people get stuff for free. And some have to suffer for it. That you have to go to college. You do not have to go to get a good job. Games causes violence. Just because I smacked a baby does not mean it causes violence. You will never be hurt by the ones you love. People saying they want the truth. You must go to college or you will not be successful.